Hey, it's so glad to be back. Jesus Christ, I haven't uploaded a video in almost, like 5 months? Something like that. Can't have that. So yeah, today just want to just go over some things been on my mind. First, kind of got to set it up for you. It's about the student loan thing because it's kind of goofy. And I know that as a person with student loans, that's why I consider it to be goofy because, I know what I signed up for, but a lot of people don't, apparently. And on top of that, I noticed that a lot of media, a lot of people that I'm talking to in real life, they're somewhat framing, or let me say, staging the student loan repayment, I don't know, initiative that Trump's launching. They're somewhat staging it as like this will be the job destroyer of 2025. And this is the worst job destroying initiative that we've ever had in history. And I'm like, oh, well, wait a minute. No, you can't do that because go back through history, you'll find a lot of shit wrong on a lot of different sides, mostly one than the other, that caused like some pretty hard economic times. So to set this up, I'm going to explain the difference between framing and staging for the purpose of explaining, an event or a situation. Framing has a ton of different definitions, but in media, I noticed one of the most widely accepted definitions is when you're framing something, you hide certain details while highlighting others, or not necessarily hiding, but at least downplaying, while highlighting other details to gear your reader or viewer towards a certain outcome. So the reason why you want to do that is you're not necessarily being dishonest. I mean, sometimes you are, but you want to get a person more so to agree with your underlining narrative, so to speak. On the other hand, you have staging. Staging, for the most part, is changing details completely to not reframe, to recertify somewhat, if that makes sense. And this, as I'm using it this way, to somewhat recertify what the story is. So, in the media, we have one way which the story is told. Then you might ask a person on the street and they tell you similar details, but a completely different story altogether, where it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up with whatever possible evidence that you have. And that's very common today. And the reason why is because, in my opinion, it appears it's like they're trying to dumb down people. And what I mean by dumb down is give, the average American, or even some of the elites sometimes, give you as less information as possible for you to make a rush informed decision, or for you to form a rushed or somewhat haphazardly opinion about something. And I mean, of course, the most obvious reason that you want you to do something like this is to prime you for whatever short con they got going on, or set you up for whatever long con. But I noticed in the past like 5 years, it's kind of been like on steroids, this staging like crap. And I'm pretty sure you've noticed, like, if you're part of like my generation, which is going to be like the mid-range millennial, maybe even geriatric millennial going back to Gen Xer, the more that you're talking to people who happen to be older than you or significantly younger than you, there's almost like nothing clicking, so to speak. It's almost like you're talking to, I don't want to necessarily just be offensive. It's like sock puppet. You're almost like talking to a tape recorder that's been preloaded with information that, I mean, let's be honest, most of the time is like dead ass wrong. But who you're talking, they're refusing to hear anything different or new. And a reason why, any information they've been given, it's been staged. It's been staged a certain way, or, if it's information you can track yourself, it's been framed a certain way. If it's based on real information, it's been framed a certain way to give them a certain opinion. And an example of this, I wanted to highlight something that happened to me a few weeks ago. It'll tie back in the story, trust me. A coworker, she's an older female. I think she's around 63, 64. So, when I was a kid, she was like young, working adult. She made a comment about her grandson. And she's one of these people is they'll just stop you and talk. It's not as if you're inviting the information. They're just stopping you and talking. Okay, I guess I'm in this conversation then. How you doing? Hey, yeah, whatever. So she mentions her grandson. I guess he's having some behavior issues, as she puts it. And, her and the kid's father, they were going to put the kid in some sort of like Kumon program, but for behavior. I don't know what the program is. Don't ask me. But she mentioned that, oh, well, he's all of a sudden he straightened up. So we didn't have to do it. And, we got ready to do all this. And, because, boys learn slower than girls. And, right there, huge red flag. That's an old, excuse my French, old bullshit feminist misnomer from the 90s that's been debunked like numerous times. So it kind of piqued my interest. So, I was halfway listening, but now I'm really listening. So I'm just letting her talk, looking dead at her, letting her talk. Oh, yeah, because, back in the day, I was, boys learn slower than girls and, the other half of the brain. And, and she starts, she unloads this like tirade of just complete, bullshit misnomers, myths that's been debunked for the better part of 30 years. Misunderstandings that the media, but more so the federal government, has like cleared up about education. She goes on and on and on. And I'm kind of wondering, I'm like, well, she's just some lady talking. Maybe, this is just like something personal in her life. Well, she lets me know that she has 2 degrees in education. So that, it kind of stung me because I'm like, well, fuck. Well, lady, you're extremely biased. So if you were to quit this job right now and go become, I don't know, a middle school teacher, you would be walking through the door biased based on biased against the boys, based on information that's been debunked 30 plus years ago. like that's insane, lady. You like what? And what I mean by debunked, I guess it would sound kind of crazy if you don't know the information. You think I'm just rambling. So in the 1990s, which, that's my era, half of the late 80s and all the 1990s, that's my era. I'm a millennial. So essentially, by 1980s, majority, we're talking like 72%. And that's according to the National Institute of Education Statistics. 72% of teachers were female, and the average age was 40. So essentially, the teachers could not keep up with the boys. And I mean, I'm going to say it right now, in case there's some like random, super duper pro-feminist that's listening to this shit. And if you want to fucking comment, we can go there and go back and forth. Because boys and girls, men and women, are completely fucking different. Boo-hoo, cry me a fucking river, okay? We are not the same. And that goes for athleticism, that goes for the way we learn things, that goes for how we regulate our emotions, everything. We are not the fucking same. So if you want to bring that shit over here, I will be gladly willing and able to dismiss your goofy ass. So getting back to the story, in the 90s and, basically all the 80s also, little boys essentially were more rambunctious. And I guess this was an issue for female teachers. And 71% of female teachers, 71% of teachers in the United States were female. So instead of dealing with the problem head on, for some, odd reason, they wanted to medicate the boys. This is where, if you ever go back and like do your own research, and essentially you kind of look up like, education standards in the 90s and stuff, you'll start seeing a lot of like Ritalin, articles about Ritalin and, oh, does your kid need Ritalin and all that other stuff? Or Adderall, does your kid need Adderall? They're too hyper and all this other bullshit. Okay, let's be honest, let's call it what it is. Essentially, you have these fucking 40-something-year-old teachers, mostly female. If they raise their voice talking about like a math problem, the girls who don't want, it's easier, and I'm just going to say it because I have a daughter. I have experience in this. It's easier to put fear in a little girl's heart by raising your voice as opposed to a little boy where if you're raising your voice and he hasn't done anything wrong, he's going to just wonder why you're raising your voice at him. What have I done wrong? As opposed to a little girl where sit down may put fear in her heart. She'll quickly sit down. A little boy might take a minute because he's like, well, what the fuck did I do wrong? What are you screaming at me for? Very simple concept, right? Okay, well, apparently not simple enough for these people because all during the 1990s, and it happened to me. Thank God my mom had common fucking sense. All throughout the 1990s, if a little boy or maybe a teenage boy, any boy in the educational system was being taught by a female teacher, and we wouldn't sit still the way they would like and all this other bullshit, they would immediately recommend, oh, there's something wrong and we need to medicate the boys. And it's like, well, wait, this issue became so large scale that I remember fucking that clown Bill Clinton being on the fucking news and passing some kind of investigation over to the National Health Institute. And that actually brings me to the next part, which is where the other half of the brain bullshit about boys, it was debunked. Yeah, it was debunked plenty of fucking times. Essentially what happened, they discovered the reason why there's, I guess, somewhat of a, and I hate using this word because it's bullshit. It's an academic jargon slang. It's an academic jargon word, but learning curve. The reason why there's a learning curve for little boys in public school, essentially, there's a lack of male fucking teachers, and they're taking away recess too early for the boys because boys are 3 to 4 times more active than little girls. That's the reality. It has nothing to do with this other half of the brain bullshit. But the reason why I bring that up is because if I didn't know any better, let's say I'm some guy from another country, just happened to stop this lady and start a conversation. She's feeding me a spoonful of bullshit that's been debunked years ago, and this is a woman claiming to have 2 to 3 fucking degrees in the subject she's talking about. And she's telling the fucking lie. She's telling like a bold-faced lie. I'm like, well, wait a minute, lady. Wait, you kind of got to get your ducks in a row a little bit. Because for the most part, it takes a quick, maybe, I don't know, 13-second Google search. And then if you have any sort of skill and little investigative skill, you'll start checking the source. And essentially, each source is going to debunk what the hell you're saying. And that's the exact thing that happened back in the 90s. There was no secret issue with the boys. As a matter of fact, I remember, and I'm going anecdotal here, so, warning. I remember in the early days, probably like around like 5th or 6th grade, when they really started this shit. Oh, the boys won't sit still. Maybe they need Ritalin. That's other bullshit. So essentially what happened, the bigwig superintendent, I went to Detroit Public Schools, superintendents will come to the school and they're listening to the claims made by these teachers. Okay, if there's an issue with the boys, you can't just talk, you can't just tell, we want to see it. What is the issue? And I remember one of my fucking teachers saying, "Oh, well, I've sent them to sit down and stuff, and the girls took a while, but they sat down, but the boys, they were just so rambunctious, and they were looking at me crazy." And the superintendent wrote some sort of I don't work in education, I don't know what this is, but wrote some kind of recommendation that the boys be tested for like ADHD and Ritalin. And I'm just going to, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for other boys in the class, or at this point, they'll be grown men. Just being honest, there was nothing that fucking happened. Okay, it was like fucking, I remember it was like after lunch. So maybe around like the 1 o'clock hour. And yeah, okay, we're bored. Oh my God, sorry. We did our fucking work. We're bored. And this is where the bullshit comes in because essentially they're trying to, I don't want to say equalize, they're trying to force some kind of equity standard on both genders. Okay, sorry, not sorry. We're not the fucking same. Little girls can sit there and color in a fucking book, for example. The shit gets boring in 10 minutes, but they'll keep doing, Okay, little boys, sue me. We'll color for about 10 minutes. A fucking advertisement for Spider-Man will come on. Now we're on the desk. Fuck yeah, Spider-Man. Okay, at like 6 years old, that's what the fuck we're doing. Okay, get mad, sue me, whatever. That's reality. We are not the same. And I want you to notice how that entire conversation, minus this weird little explanation I just get, that entire conversation was staged as an issue with boys. And it's not. Because if you go through the history, it's an issue with female teachers, lack of male teachers, and taking away recess too early for male students. And that brings me to the student loan shit, where I was reading an article the other day. I'm at work, doing regular shit. I'm reading an article where a lot of media that tends to be left leaning. I'm not trying to pick on anybody here. I'm just telling them, I'm not biting my tongue for anybody. It's typically left leaning media. In real life, when you talk to people, it tends to be fucking, like I said, a tape recorder, left leaning people that heard some shit somewhere, and you start off trying to have a civil discussion. You're doing your part by bringing up stats and you have professional references and all this other shit, but the person's just looking at you repeating the same shit over and over again, rephrasing it a different way as if they're saying some new shit. And now you're kind of, why the fuck am I talking to you? I'm talking to a tape recorder. You're not seriously trying to hear what the fuck I'm saying. So I'm just going to be done with this. But with the student loan issue, I read some shit where left-leaning media, they're essentially trying to compare like the possible fallout from the student loan, garnishments, and I believe they can also take like tax returns if you're defaulted too long. They're trying to compare that shit to some sort of like massive layoff, because essentially, this is the same time frame. If you're, let's do this in the future. This is the same time frame that President Trump is cutting the fucking cord on all this DEI bullshit. So like if you're black, you didn't really earn a job, but you're hired because you're black. Essentially, they're cutting your fucking job. Get the fuck out of here, okay? You've done nothing to earn a job, but you're Mr. C-suite executive making $300,000 a year. And I ask you to tell me 4 core values about the fucking job, and you're looking at me like, I don't know. Well, okay, you shouldn't be here. You're fired. So essentially, yes, in the long run, with so many people defaulting on student loans, it's going to cause issues. They can't focus on work, probably going to be fired. Mix that with DEI. We've put that bullshit in our culture for the past, 60 fucking years. Offshoot from feminism. And yeah, firing these people, displacing them, making them get, people who've worked in these bullshit government jobs for 40 fucking years suddenly have to go out into the private sector and like fight for a fucking job like everybody else. Sorry, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. But you can't compare that shit, and you can't try to make some kind of claim to hard economic times. That's not Trump's fault. And, even though I support the guy, I'm not the hugest Trump fan. I just said, that's not his fault. You have to go back in history. Okay, what started, I don't want to say started. What dealt the biggest blow to the erosion of the middle class? Was it some secret fucking backdoor deals? No, it was fucking NAFTA. This is common knowledge. You want to say, where are all these jobs going to? No, okay. Like I said, as a mid-range to older millennial, I was a little kid when NAFTA was signed by that excuse of a man called Bill Clinton. NAFTA was fucking signed, and hence, every single country that the jobs were shipped to, I believe the fucking, the Kiltons had kids in those countries in prominent positions, but I didn't say that, whatever. Anyway, hundreds of thousands of fucking jobs were lost, including, I don't want to say including, the hardest hit was probably the Midwest. And as I'm in the Midwest, I'm from Detroit. So I remember watching the men, especially the men. I mean, it was women too, but I just have to highlight the men because it's fucking horrible. Hanging their heads low as their fucking jobs are sent to Mexico. So I want you to imagine if you have a mortgage, or maybe you have, a kid or so in college. Maybe you have a few car loans, you have multiple insurances, you've worked yourself into a position where you have a vacation home, and all that shit is snatched away from you. Because some fucking asshole who wants to get his fucking dick sucked in office just signed a shitty deal that literally snatches your job and sending that shit miles and miles away so he can line his fucking pockets with his weird-looking pancake-faced ass wife. Yeah, that's what happened. That's what started this fucked up ass economy. Because, even doing this fucking story, looking for consistent numbers on how many jobs was lost, the damage is so widespread and it hits so hard to this day. Every single government source has a different number. I'm looking at, 680,000 jobs lost. Oh, no, it was 2.1 million jobs lost. Oh, no, it was 850,000, just ridiculous. And I've also noticed when you bring this up to people who tend to be a little left leaning, or maybe they bounce center left if they don't know what to do. I know people like that. They have no personal opinion about shit. So when you bring it up, they tend to bounce center left. Like, man, be a fucking man or a woman and pick a side, or pick the best decision out of multiple options. Grow the fuck up. When you bring, NAFTA up to these people, I notice they tend to try to downplay the damage from it and almost try to erase it from history when you're talking about like the economy and politics. And it's like, you can't do it. What the fuck are you talking about? Well, man, it wasn't that big a deal, and we recovered. Actually, no, we didn't, because right after NAFTA, by the time the country was ready to recover and we're starting to become a service-based country where most of our jobs service-based, 9/11 happened. Remember that shit? Yeah. And I'll bite the bullet on that one. That was Bush Jr. who sent all that fucking money, billions and billions and billions and billions, over to fight this fucking war for mass destruction, just to find out, oops, ain't shit over there. We're just fucking around. People are just getting paid. Yeah, we went from '01 to every bit of fucking 2014 or some shit like that, funding this bullshit ass war, and then right after that shit, maybe a few years of possible prosperity, and then right around the 2015 mark, you start having all this tech industry bullshit, and we're a service-based economy now, so really you really don't have a middle class now if you don't have a fucking, which I have a degree, but that's beside the point. If you don't have a fucking degree in the tech field somewhere, you're really getting fucked over. And then before we can even try to recover from that shit, boom, you got COVID. So what do you mean? This student loan repayment shit will be the worst economic times. No, it's not. That shit has been accumulating since the 1980s. And if you want to be technical, we can kind of throw some of this blame on the generation, I'm not going to name any names, the generation that essentially eradicated training programs for jobs and pushed the fuck out of the degrees. Oh, you got to have a degree for this shit, have a degree for this shit, have a degree for that shit. You got to have a degree for this. Yeah, that helped erode the fucking economy. This student loan shit is nothing more than a man telling a group of grown-ass fucking adults, it is not my fault that most of the defaulted borrowers tend to lean left and tend to be female. That's their fucking fault. Pay your shit back. That's all. That's all this is. Pay your shit back. And it goes back into the, I was telling you about staging versus framing. The student loan bullshit, I notice, is being staged as this, this is the Great Depression Part 2, and, it's coupled with DEI to ruin shit. No, it won't. And if it does, fucking well. This is not the fault of anyone here. This is nothing but amalgamation of very poor leadership over the past 40-something fucking years, and it led to hard economic times, which is causing a collapse. Okay, it's not one event. Get the fuck out of here with that. And I notice it tends to be left-leaning media. And like, if you're talking to a person in real life, left-leaning ideologues who are just spreading this bullshit. And you're like, what are you talking about? It leaves you dumbfounded. You feel like you're talking to a toddler. Well, no, you can't really ignore the past. You want to know how we got here. You have to follow each fucking step. Which leader fucked up. Which leader made attempts to correct shit, but only had a short amount of time, and then right after him, a bunch of fucking idiots came in and started doing dumb shit. Yeah, that's kind of how degradation works. If you look at Rome, you had a leader that was, pro-Rome, pro-construction, pro-family. Then you had, you want to call them demigods or just subservient leaders. I don't know what the fuck you want to call them. But you have people come behind Caesar and all those guys pushing that gay shit. Excuse my French, or excuse my uncouth vernacular, but pushing that weird shit, men hooking up with men and shit. And then you look up, by the way, that too, and feminism. So by the time it was the fall of fucking Rome, no one's really stable. No one was protecting Rome. There was no masculine men. Everybody was fucking tiptoe. If you have a Roman woman that she's flirting with a fucking Persian, and there's probably the Romans guards to the hey lady, you might want to stop fucking flirting with those guys. There are enemies, and if you keep letting them in the gate, they might fucking stab us, take us over. I don't have to listen to you. I'll flirt with who I want. 5 minutes later, there's a whole fucking army of them inside the gate. fucking stabbing Romans. That same lady. Oh, what happened? Oh, bitch. Idiot. So moving on. Sorry for trailing off. I'm just going to end it and say that I know that when, we're talking about staging, framing or staging, it appears that that seems to be the new normal when it comes to the media and people who are over the top in love with Machiavellianism and just manipulating, which Machiavellianism is not a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of what you need to survive. You got to be able to, you can be a good person, but you got to be able to cut your cunning on and off. But I notice that when it comes to people who tend to be left leaning, when they stage events, they're never really, they're never really versed on hiding the past of whatever bullshit they're talking about. So the only way to really stage it to you and kind of con you is to keep you in the here and now. So if you're talking to these kind of people, I would implore you to always, always, always look into the past of what they're talking about. Like if you're talking to okay, well, yeah, okay, you're going to teach me about this thing? Okay, cool. Tell me where it started. Articulate it for me. You're probably, and this is just me, this is a complete personal opinion. If you do this and it doesn't work, once or twice, maybe that person just got their cool shit down. Maybe they got their con down. I notice when I do this to people, including that lady, the Miss Teacher lady who was dead ass wrong, their little position tends to fall apart because that's the one stone in most cases that's going to destroy their castle. If you're running a con on me and you're staging some information to get your desired outcome and manipulate me at the same time, okay, once I ask you the history of it and you can't even articulate it to me, or the history exposes that you're fucking lying, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm just not going to take you serious. And I'm not saying that. I'm not telling you to do that shit to people for the purpose of, being a contrarian and just always disagreeing. But I understand that in today's time, it'll just keep you safer. Because it's the new normal to just con people. Just con people with bullshit info. It was fun getting this out. So like, subscribe. I'm going to try to bring more out. I'm going to try to stop fucking disappearing for like 2-3 months. And you guys are awesome. Bye.